In the small town of Makwale, where the sun painted the roads with golden dust, there lived a young woman named Amina. She worked as a waitress in a tiny roadside cafe. The cafe was old, with wooden tables and a small kitchen that always smelled of tea and fresh bread. Amina's life was not easy. Her wages were small, and most days she barely earned enough to buy food for herself and her younger brother, Musa. Still, Amina always wore a smile. She believed that kindness was the one thing a person could give freely, no matter how poor they were. Every afternoon, after the lunch rush, Amina noticed a man sitting under the big mango tree near the cafe. He was old, thin, and always dressed in torn clothes. His hair was gray and his hands were rough like dry soil. The man often sat quietly watching people pass by, his eyes full of sadness. Most villagers ignored him, pretending he didn't exist. Some even made rude comments as they walked past. Amina felt a heavy ache in her heart every time she saw him. One day after her shift, she took a piece of bread and a cup of tea from the kitchen and walked outside. The wind blew softly as she approached the man. "Good afternoon, Baba," she said gently, using the respectful word for father. "You look hungry. Please take this." The man lifted his head slowly, surprised by her voice. His eyes, though tired, were kind. He looked at the bread in her hand, then at her face. "Are you sure, child?" he asked quietly. "You look like you don't have much yourself." Amina smiled. "I have enough to share," she said. The man took the bread and tea with shaky hands. He began to eat slowly, like someone who hadn't eaten properly in days. Amina watched him for a moment, then turned to go back inside. Before she left, she heard him whisper, "May the sun always shine on your path, my child." The next day, Amina brought him another small meal, a bowl of rice and beans left over from the cafe. The day after that, she brought him soup. And then the next day, bread again. It became part of her daily routine. No matter how busy or tired she was, she always made sure the old man had something to eat. Her coworkers soon noticed. One afternoon, her friend and fellow waitress Tund laughed and said, "Amina, you waste your time with that beggar. Why give food to someone who will never give you anything back?" Amina just smiled and replied softly, "Kindness doesn't ask for anything in return." The cafe owner, a man named Mr. Okoro, wasn't happy either. "If you keep giving food to beggars, you'll lose your job," he warned. "This cafe is for paying customers." Amina lowered her eyes respectfully. "I understand, sir. But the food I give him is from my own share." Mr. Okoro grumbled but didn't stop her. He secretly admired her gentle heart, though he would never admit it. The old man, who never shared his name, always thanked her with quiet words of blessing. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were full of wisdom. "You have a pure heart," he once told her. "Kindness is like rain, it falls on everyone but it always returns to the one who gives it." Amina didn't fully understand what he meant, but she smiled anyway. She didn't help him for praise or reward. She simply couldn't watch someone suffer when she could do something, even if it was small. One afternoon, after she gave him his meal, Amina sat beside him for the first time. They talked about life in Makwale, the busy market, the laughter of children, and the smell of roasted corn in the evenings. The man told her he once worked in the city, but when hard times came, he lost everything. Amina listened with care, never judging, never asking too many questions. As weeks passed, something strange happened. The old man began waiting for her every day. His face, once full of sadness, started to show small smiles. The cafe staff began to notice too. "That old man looks healthier," Tun said one day. "Maybe your kindness is some kind of medicine." Amina laughed softly. "Maybe kindness feeds more than just the stomach," she said. One day, Amina came to work with an empty stomach. There had been no food left at home. But when she saw the old man waiting under the tree, she still brought him her lunch. Her hands trembled slightly as she gave it to him, but her heart felt light. "Here you go, Baba," she said. "It's not much, but it's warm." The man looked at her closely, his eyes deep with emotion. "You didn't eat, did you?" he asked. Amina shook her head. "I'll eat later." The old man sighed. "You remind me of my daughter," he said. "She had your heart, soft and full of light." Amina smiled, but she noticed tears in his eyes. She didn't ask questions, she just sat beside him quietly until the sun began to set. As days turned into weeks, many people in Makwale began to notice what Amina was doing. Some started to bring the old man small gifts, a banana, a cup of water, sometimes even coins. It was as if her kindness had awakened kindness in others too. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, the old man spoke again. "Amina," he said slowly, "you have given me something that money cannot buy. You saw me when everyone else looked away. Amina smiled warmly. We all need to be seen, Baba. The man nodded and smiled faintly. You don't know how special you are. That night, as Amina walked home, the stars shimmered above the quiet town. She felt peace in her heart. Her life was still hard, her pay still small, but she felt richer than ever. She didn't know that her small act of kindness would soon change her life in ways she could never imagine. The next morning when she reached the cafe, the old man was not under the tree. His spot was empty. Amina looked around worried. She waited all day but he never came. Her heart sank. She hoped he was safe somewhere, maybe resting. But deep down she missed him, his soft voice, his gentle blessings. She didn't know that this was only the beginning of a story that would soon touch every heart in Mackwale. The days in Mackwale passed like gentle waves on the river, slow but full of hidden life. Every morning, Amina woke before sunrise, washed her face with cold water, and walked to the cafe with quiet determination. Her shoes were old and her dress had been mended many times, but her spirit remained strong. She believed that life would always be better if one chose kindness, even when the world chose laughter instead. By now, almost everyone in the cafe knew about Amina's habit of feeding the old homeless man under the mango tree. Every day when the lunch rush was over, she would pack a small portion of food, sometimes a bowl of rice, sometimes leftover stew, and sneak out to meet him. The man always greeted her with the same gentle smile and said, "You came again, my child." His voice was soft but full of warmth. Not everyone saw her kindness the same way. One afternoon, as she wrapped a piece of bread in paper, her coworker Tund leaned against the counter and shook his head. "Amina," he said with a laugh, "you feed that beggar every single day. Don't you see? He's just lazy. If he wanted to eat, he could work like the rest of us." Amina didn't look up. She tied the bread carefully and replied in a calm voice, "Maybe he can't work, Tund. We don't know his story." Tund rolled his eyes. "His story doesn't matter. You should save your food for yourself. Or better yet, give it to me," he joked, chuckling. The cafe owner, Mr. Okoro, overheard them. He walked out from the kitchen and frowned. "Amina, people are talking," he said in a low tone. "They say you're wasting food on a beggar. Customers might think this cafe feeds beggars instead of paying guests." Amina bowed her head politely. "I understand, sir. But the food I give him is from my own portion. It doesn't belong to the cafe." Mr. Okoro sighed. "You have a soft heart, girl. But soft hearts don't fill empty pockets." Then he turned and went back inside, shaking his head. Amina said nothing. She took the bread and cup of tea and walked outside as the others whispered behind her. She felt their laughter like tiny stones against her back, but she didn't let it break her. When she reached the mango tree, the old man was already there, sitting quietly with his hands folded. His clothes were still torn and his hair still gray and messy, but there was something about him that made her feel calm, as if his silence carried peace. "Good afternoon, Baba," she greeted cheerfully, handing him the food. "Ah, Amina," he said with a smile. "You always come." "I always will," she replied. He looked at the bread and then at her face. "Tell me, child," he asked gently, "don't people laugh at you for helping me?" Amina hesitated. "They do," she admitted. "They say I'm wasting my time." The old man chuckled softly. "The world laughs at kindness because it does not understand it. But remember this, kind hearts shine brighter than gold." Amina smiled at his words. They felt like a small flame in her chest, something warm that could not be put out. After that day, the whispers in the cafe grew louder. When Amina entered the kitchen, people would fall silent, pretending to work. But as soon as she turned her back, they began to talk again. "She thinks she's a saint," one said. "She'll never have anything if she keeps giving it all away," another added. Still, Amina didn't stop. Even when she had nothing left for herself, she found something to share. On days when she skipped her own meal, she told herself, "He needs it more than I do." One hot afternoon, the cafe was busier than usual. Traders from the nearby market came to eat, and the sound of voices filled the small space. Amina worked faster than ever, carrying plates and refilling cups. But even in the noise, her eyes drifted to the window. The old man was sitting outside, his head bent, waiting quietly. When her shift ended, she rushed to him, still wearing her apron. She placed a plate of warm stew in front of him. "You must eat before the rain comes," she said. He looked up at the gray sky. "Ah, it will rain soon. You should go home before it starts." "I'll be fine," Amina said. "You eat first." The man smiled, his wrinkled face softening. "You remind me of my daughter," he said. "She used to say the same thing." Amina sat beside him, watching the clouds darken. "Where is she now?" she asked softly. The man looked away. "Far away," he said after a pause. "Maybe she has forgotten me." Amina wanted to ask more, but she saw the sadness in his eyes and stayed quiet. The rain began to fall soon after, soft at first and then heavy. She stood up and handed him her old shawl. "Here, use this. You'll stay dry." He tried to refuse, but she wrapped it around his shoulders anyway. "You need it more than I do," she said with a smile. As she ran back inside the cafe, wet from the rain, Tund called out from the doorway. "You'll catch a cold one day, Amina?" He laughed. "All for that beggar." Amina just smiled and said, "If kindness gives me a cold, I'll wear it proudly." That night, when the cafe closed, she sat by the window of her small home and thought about the old man's words. "Kind hearts shine brighter than gold." The sentence echoed in her mind like a gentle song. She wondered what he meant. How could kindness shine? How could it be brighter than gold? The next morning she woke to the smell of fresh rain and walked to work. As she passed the mango tree, she saw the old man already waiting, holding the shawl she had given him. It was dry and folded neatly. When she came closer, he smiled and handed it back to her. "It kept me warm last night," he said. "Thank you, my child." Amina took it but noticed something strange. The old man's hands were clean, and his voice seemed stronger. There was a quiet dignity in his manner that she hadn't seen before. She wanted to ask about it, but before she could, he said, "Amina, you have a light that many people don't see. One day the world will know your heart." His words stayed in her mind all day. She didn't know that the man she called Baba was watching her with deep respect, that he was not just a poor beggar, but someone whose story was far from ordinary. For now, Amina only knew that kindness was her duty, and even though the laughter of others hurt, she felt stronger each time she gave. Her kindness was like a quiet fire burning in a dark place. It made her believe that no matter how cruel people could be, one small act of love could still light the world. That night, as she closed her eyes, she whispered to herself, "Maybe he's right. Maybe kindness really does shine brighter than gold." And far away, under the mango tree, the old man smiled in the darkness, whispering, "Soon she will know." The sky over Mackwale was heavy and gray that evening. Clouds gathered like dark blankets, and the smell of rain filled the air. The wind blew dust down the narrow streets, and people began to hurry home, holding baskets over their heads. The little cafe where Amina worked was still full of noise and chatter, but everyone could feel the storm coming. The sound of thunder rolled across the sky like a drum. Amina looked out of the cafe window and saw the first drops falling. They splashed against the dusty road, turning it into soft mud. She sighed and began to wipe the tables, hoping the rain would not be too strong. But within minutes, the storm grew wild. The rain poured down hard, and the wind whistled through the cracks in the cafe walls. People rushed out, trying to reach home before the streets flooded. "Let's close early," shouted Mr. Okoro, the cafe owner. "No one will come now." Amina nodded and began to stack the chairs. Her feet were tired and her back ached from a long day of work. She was ready to go home too. But as she walked toward the door, something caught her eye. Through the rain, under the big mango tree, she saw the old man. He was sitting exactly where he always did, his shoulders shaking in the cold. Water ran down his face and into his torn shirt. Amina froze for a moment. Everyone else was running away from the storm, but he just sat there, helpless and alone. Her heart ached. Without a second thought, she grabbed her old brown shawl from the hook by the door and ran outside. The rain was cold and it soaked through her clothes instantly. The muddy water splashed around her feet as she ran toward him. "Baba," she called out over the sound of the thunder. "Baba, come inside. You'll catch your death in this rain." The old man turned his head slowly, his eyes blinking against the falling water. "Amina," he said weakly. "Go home, child. You'll get sick." But Amina shook her head. "No, I can't leave you here." She wrapped her shawl around his shoulders. The fabric was thin, but it was all she had. "Please come with me," she said firmly. She held his arm and helped him to his feet. His steps were slow and heavy, and the water around them was rising. Together, they walked back toward the cafe, struggling against the wind. When they reached the door, Amina pulled him inside. The cafe was empty now, quiet except for the sound of rain on the roof. The air smelled of wet wood and tea leaves. Amina guided the old man to a chair and brought a small cup of hot tea from the kitchen. She placed it in his hands. "Drink this, Baba," she said softly. "It will warm you." The old man looked at her with eyes that seemed to see more than she could imagine. "You are a strange child," he said with a faint smile. You should be home by the fire, not out in the rain saving an old fool. Amina laughed lightly. You're not a fool, Baba. You just needed help. And if I were in your place, I hope someone would do the same for me. The old man took a sip of the tea and nodded slowly. Few people think like you do, he said. Most would walk past and never look back. Amina sat beside him, watching the rain outside. The water rushed down the street like a river, and lightning flashed across the sky. For a while they sat in silence. The only sound was the storm and the soft clink of the old man's cup. After some time the old man spoke again. His voice was calm, but there was a strange weight in it. Amina, he said slowly, you have helped me more than you know. Amina turned to him, surprised. I only shared a few meals, she said. It's nothing special. He smiled faintly. To those who have nothing, a single piece of bread can mean everything. But your kindness is not just in your hands. It is in your heart. Amina blushed a little and looked away. I only do what feels right. The man nodded. Yes, he said softly. And that is why you will see something tomorrow. Something tomorrow? Amina repeated, confused. The old man set his empty cup on the table and looked at her with eyes that seemed almost young again. Tomorrow come to the big house behind the market, he said. I have something to show you. Amina frowned. The big house? You mean the one with the blue gate? He smiled. Yes, that one. She stared at him, unsure what to think. The big house behind the market was one of the largest in Mackwale, a place where rich people lived, not someone like him. She thought maybe he was joking, but his voice was serious, calm, and certain. I don't understand, she said quietly. Why there? You will understand tomorrow, he replied. Now go home, child. The rain will not stop soon. Amina hesitated. She wanted to make sure he would be all right. Are you sure you'll be safe here tonight? She asked. He nodded. Don't worry about me. You have already done more than enough. Amina looked at him one last time before picking up her small bag. She walked to the door and stepped outside. The rain had slowed a little, falling in soft drops now. She turned back and saw the old man sitting in the corner of the cafe, his shawl still around his shoulders, his hands folded like he was deep in thought. That night, as Amina walked home through the wet streets, her mind was full of questions. What did he mean by, something to show you? Why the big house? Was he testing her, or did he have family there? She didn't know. But there was something in his eyes that made her believe his words were important. When she reached home, her brother Musa was waiting, worried. You're soaked, he said. Where have you been? I helped the old man from the cafe, Amina replied softly, hanging her wet shawl to dry. He was cold and alone in the rain. Musa sighed but smiled a little. You're too kind, sister. One day your kindness will bring you trouble. Or maybe it will bring something good, she said, remembering the old man's mysterious words. That night, she lay awake listening to the soft drumming of rain on the roof. Her thoughts drifted between worry and wonder. Who was that man really? Why did he always look at her like he knew something she didn't? When morning came, the storm had passed. The sky was clear again and the streets were washed clean. Amina dressed quickly and tied her hair back. Her heart beat fast with curiosity as she prepared to go to work. But before she reached the cafe, she stopped in front of the big house behind the market, the one with the blue gate just like he said. For a long moment she stood there, unsure whether to go in or walk away. The house looked too grand, too quiet, too far from her world. She didn't know that behind that gate her life was about to change forever. The sun rose bright and golden over Mackwale the next morning. The rain had washed the streets clean, and puddles sparkled like small mirrors on the ground. Amina walked quickly through the marketplace, her heart beating fast. The old man's words from the night before echoed in her mind. Come to the big house behind the market. I have something to show you. She reached the large blue gate he had described. It stood tall and shiny, with guards in clean uniforms on either side. Amina hesitated. She had never been this close to such a grand house before. The walls were white, the garden full of colorful flowers, and the air smelled of fresh roses. It was the kind of place only the rich of Mackwale lived in. Amina's clothes were simple, her shoes dusty from walking. She looked down at herself and almost turned back. What am I doing here? She thought. This can't be right. That old man couldn't possibly belong to this place. Just as she was about to leave, one of the guards stepped forward. Miss Amina? He asked politely. She froze. Yes, she said softly. The master is expecting you, the guard said, opening the gate. Her eyes widened in surprise. Expecting me? She thought. How could he know I would come? She stepped inside slowly. The garden was full of green plants, and the path led to a large house made of red bricks. Every step felt unreal. Her hands trembled as she reached the door. A tall man in a fine blue suit came out to meet her. He looked kind with a calm smile and wise eyes. "You must be Amina," he said warmly. Amina nodded nervously. "Yes, sir," she replied. "But I think there has been some mistake. I came because—" He raised his hand gently. "No mistake, my dear. You are exactly where you should be. Please come in." She followed him into a large sitting room. The floors shone like mirrors and the furniture looked expensive. There were paintings on the walls, pictures of smiling families and fields of coffee plants. Amina felt small and out of place. The man turned to her and said, "You helped someone very important to me." She looked confused. "I helped a poor old man," she said softly. "But I don't understand." Before she could finish, another voice spoke from behind her. "You helped me, Amina." She turned quickly and there he was. The old man from under the mango tree stood at the doorway, dressed in fine clean clothes. His beard was neatly trimmed, and his posture was straight and strong. His eyes still had the same warmth, but now they also carried pride and joy. Amina gasped. "Baba?" she whispered. He smiled. "Not quite Baba," he said with a small laugh. "My name is Mr. Cato." Amina stared at him in disbelief. "Mr. Cato? But you were—" "I was the beggar you fed," he said kindly. "But that was only part of the truth." Amina could hardly speak. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. Mr. Cato walked closer, his steps gentle. "You see, my child, I once owned that little cafe where you work. Years ago I built it with my own hands. It was my pride and joy. But when I grew older, I wanted to know what kind of hearts worked under my roof. I wanted to see if true kindness still lived in people's hearts. So, I disguised myself as a poor man and sat outside, waiting, watching." Amina's eyes filled with tears. "All this time?" she whispered. Mr. Cato nodded. "Yes. Many passed me by. Some threw insults. Some pretended not to see. But you stopped. You shared your food, your shawl, your warmth, even when you had so little. You saw a man, not a beggar." Tears rolled down Amina's cheeks. "I never thought about reward," she said softly. "I just didn't want you to go hungry." Mr. Cato smiled. "And that is why your heart is rare." The tall man in the blue suit, Mr. Cato's assistant, stepped forward and handed Amina an envelope. "This," he said, "is a small gift from Mr. Cato." Amina opened it carefully. Inside were papers and a key. She looked up in confusion. "I don't understand," she said again. Mr. Cato chuckled gently. "The papers are for ownership. The cafe is now yours, Amina. You will run it. You have earned it, not through work but through kindness." Amina's hands shook. "Mine?" she whispered. "But I can't accept this. I'm just a waitress." "You were a waitress," Mr. Cato said kindly. "Now you are a manager, a leader, a woman whose goodness will feed many." Amina covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Mr. Cato smiled. "Say nothing. Just promise me one thing, never stop being who you are. The world needs more hearts like yours." Amina nodded, wiping her tears. "I promise," she said softly. They sat together for a long while. Mr. Cato told her how he had lost his wife years ago and how, since then, he had wanted to use his wealth to find goodness in others. He told her how every time she shared her meal with him, it reminded him of his late wife's kindness. "She used to do the same," he said. "Feed the poor, care for strangers. When you helped me, it felt like she was smiling again." Amina listened quietly, her heart full. She had never imagined her small act of sharing food could touch someone's life so deeply. Before she left, Mr. Cato walked her to the gate. The sky was blue again and the birds were singing. "Go now, Amina," he said. "The cafe is waiting. It needs your touch, your smile, your kindness." Amina turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Baba, I mean Mr. Cato." He laughed softly. "You can still call me Baba," he said. "After all, you treated me like one long before you knew who I was." She smiled, bowed her head respectfully and walked out of the gate, holding the papers close to her chest. Her heart felt light, her steps full of hope. When she reached the cafe, her co-workers stared in shock as she walked in. "Amina," Tun said, almost dropping a cup. "Why are you here? You look different, and what's that in your hand?" Amina smiled. "It's the key," she said simply. "Mr. Cato gave me the cafe." Everyone froze. "What?" they shouted. "Yes," she said, her smile widening. The old man under the mango tree was Mr. Cato all along. The cafe fell silent for a moment. Then Tund slowly whispered, "You mean, the beggar was the owner?" Amina nodded. "He was testing our hearts. And I guess I passed." The workers looked at each other in disbelief. Some felt ashamed, remembering the cruel things they had said. Tund rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm sorry, Amina," he said quietly. "I laughed at you for helping him." Amina smiled kindly. "It's all right, Tund. It's never too late to learn kindness." That day the cafe reopened under Amina's care. She worked with joy and treated everyone with respect. She hired young people who needed jobs and made sure the poor could always have a meal, even if they couldn't pay. When people asked her how she came to own the cafe, she would smile and say, "Because once I fed a hungry man, and he fed my dreams." Weeks turned into months and the little cafe in Mackwale began to shine again, brighter than ever before. The cracked walls were painted a warm golden color, and the smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee filled the air each morning. Mr. Cato had kept his promise. He rebuilt the cafe from the ground up and placed Amina in charge. The new sign above the door read, "The Table of Kindness." People from all over town came just to see it. Some came for food, others came for warmth, but everyone left with a full stomach and a lighter heart. Amina arrived early every day, opening the doors with a smile. She swept the floor, arranged the chairs, and made sure the kitchen ran smoothly. She treated her workers like family, greeting them by name and listening when they spoke. The same people who once laughed at her now respected her deeply. Tund, her old co-worker, was now her assistant. He worked hard and never forgot the lesson he learned. "You taught me something important," he once told her. "Kindness doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong." Amina only smiled. "That's what Mr. Cato taught me too," she said softly. Every afternoon, when the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Amina set a small plate of food outside the cafe, a bowl of soup, a piece of bread, and sometimes a cup of tea. It was her way of remembering the man she had once helped. Even when no one came to take it, she never skipped a day. People often asked her why she did it. Some said, "Amina, you don't have to give food for free anymore. You're a manager now." Others said, "What if no one comes? Isn't that a waste?" But Amina would just smile gently and reply, "Kindness is never wasted. It always finds its way back, sometimes in ways you don't expect." One evening an old woman came to the cafe, shivering from the cold. She had walked from a far village, her feet tired and her clothes torn. Amina saw her through the window and ran outside immediately. "Please come in, mother," Amina said warmly. "You must be hungry." The woman tried to refuse, but Amina insisted. She gave her hot tea and a bowl of soup. "Eat first," she said softly, "then we will talk." Tears filled the woman's eyes as she took her first bite. "May the heavens bless you, my child," she whispered. "You have a heart of gold." Amina smiled and said, "Once someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. I'm just passing it on." That night, after everyone had gone home, Mr. Cato came to visit. His hair was grayer now, but his smile was still strong. He walked around the cafe slowly, looking at the happy faces, the laughter, and the busy tables. "You've done well, Amina," he said proudly. "This place feels alive again." Amina looked around the cafe, the shining cups, the smell of food, the sound of people talking. "It's all because of what you taught me," she said softly. "You showed me that kindness is the best gift of all." Mr. Cato chuckled. "No, my dear. You taught me that kindness still exists in this world. You reminded me what truly matters." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small golden pin shaped like a heart. "Wear this," he said. "It will remind you that goodness always finds its way home." Amina took the pin carefully and placed it on her uniform. "Thank you, Baba," she said with a smile. As months passed, the Table of Kindness became more than a cafe. It became a home for the lonely, a shelter for the hungry, and a place where laughter filled the air. Children would come after school for sweet buns, travelers stopped for rest, and old friends gathered for stories. Amina trained young girls to work in the cafe, teaching them not only how to serve food but how to serve with love. "When you give someone food," she told them, "you're not just feeding their body, you're feeding their heart." One day a young man came into the cafe. He looked lost and tired, his clothes worn out. Amina noticed him right away. "Please sit," she said gently. "You look like you haven't eaten all day." The young man hesitated. "I have no money," he said. Amina smiled. "You don't need money to eat here," she said. "You only need an empty stomach." He ate quietly, his eyes full of gratitude. Before leaving he whispered, "Someday I'll return your kindness." Amina only smiled. She didn't expect anything in return. Years passed and the little cafe continued to grow. Its name spread to nearby towns and people began calling it the Cafe with a Heart. Reporters came to write about it, travelers came to see it, and many tried to copy its spirit. But none could match the warmth that filled Amina's place, because it came from her heart, a heart that had once given a poor man bread without expecting anything in return. One quiet morning, Amina stood outside the cafe watching the sunrise. The light touched her face softly and she thought about everything that had happened. The days of struggle, the laughter, the tears, and the surprise that had changed her life. She whispered to herself, "Kindness brought me here. Kindness built this home." Mr. Cato, now older and slower, still visited her often. They would sit together under the same mango tree where it all began. He would sip his tea and smile. "Do you ever miss the old days?" he asked once. Amina laughed. "Sometimes. But I think those days made me who I am. Without them there would be no cafe, no lesson, no story." Mr. Cato nodded. "You're right. Life has a way of rewarding those who keep their hearts pure." The wind rustled through the mango leaves, carrying with it the smell of food and laughter from the cafe. Children ran past, their voices bright and happy. Amina looked at the sky and smiled. "Kindness always comes back," she said softly. "Sometimes in ways we never expect." As the day began, Amina opened the doors of the table of kindness once more. The sound of clinking cups and cheerful voices filled the air. Another day had begun, another chance to spread warmth, one meal at a time. And as long as Amina lived, no one in Mackwale ever went hungry again.